Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast Network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
This is an especially conceptual edition of Bonus Byte, focused entirely on a new iOS 12 concept video by iupdateos. What drew me to this was the level of thought and fine detail that went into it. Of course, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, I've shared the concept on all Apple-sized socials, and I'll include it in the show notes. So rather than have myself ramble on about it, I am super stoked to have the mastermind of this concept, Sam from iupdateos, on the episode all the way from the USA. So how's it going, Sam?
I'm doing great, Simon. How are you?
Cool. So you've alluded to the fact that you're around Central America. Can you give an actual location?
Yeah, so I'm based in St. Louis when I go home from college during the summer, and then I'm basically middle of Illinois where I go to school. I don't usually talk about the exact location, but basically like central United States.
Yep.
It's finally getting warm, which is super exciting for us here.
Yeah, it's your spring, it's our autumn, coming winter sort of thing, so that's about where we're at. But yeah, I had to, just to get a note of the time difference, I basically just set Austin, Texas, because I was like, well, that was central as well, so for the time zone. But yeah, cool. So that all worked out. All right, so before we start, I wanted to state that while I applaud like imagination in concepts, I find a lot of them to garner the sort of "I doubt that'll happen" type of response. But what drew me to this iOS 12 concept is the attention to detail, particularly with the fonts, the music, the desert theme, and the animation easing and everything. It's all very Apple-like. So what then actually sealed it for me was the fact the features all seem very doable for WWDC this year. So with nearly 300,000 views to this video alone, what's the feedback been like so far?
Oh my gosh, it's been so positive. Andrew Vega, who actually did the video animation, we were texting pretty much nonstop for the first 5-6 hours that the video was up. And I remember so clearly we were talking, and Andrew, he told me like the day before it was done, because he'd been working on this for a very long time, and he was like, Sam, what if this caps out at 5,000 views? And I was like, Andrew, like obviously that worry was in our head, but I was like, dude, there's no way. Like I feel like I've got enough of a channel where we can get the attention of 9to5 Mac, and we were really hoping that like The Verge would pick it up, somebody just absolutely huge. Hasn't happened yet, but we're never gonna say never just yet. But he was worried, as I was, because we had never done this before. Like, how well is this gonna go? Are people actually gonna care? And because my audience is mainly interested in iOS, that's what my niche on YouTube is. I felt pretty confident about it, and I watched it again and again and again, and I'm like, this is too good. No one's done anything like this so far for iOS, and we were just so excited.
Well, trust me, I watched it again and again and again. I'm really addicted to it. I did actually see another iOS 12 one, but there was enough that they missed out in it, and little things like typos and that I was just like, they really, I got the sense they tried to rush it out, whereas this really has that well thought out approach to it. And so, yeah, basically, I just want to get into it. I have a few things I'd like to ask you.
Sure.
But just right before that, are you going to be lucky enough to actually attend WWDC this year?
Oh my gosh. Well, I haven't gotten my invite from Apple just yet. I'm patiently waiting. I'm not registered. Well, I am registered as a developer, but I can't at this point in time afford to enter like I think it's $1,500 or $2,500 lottery. It was way too pricey, and part of me says, someone at Apple, some Apple employee that works there with all the coverage this got has to have seen this or had to have seen the concept. But as of right now, will not be attending. Definitely, like, if I could attend one dream conference to attend, other than like the iPhone conference every year, because that's exciting, would be WWDC. I love new software. I couldn't imagine being there as Apple announced something. So maybe in the future, but not officially.
I think you're definitely on the road to get there with the type of stuff that you're doing and the type of attention that you get from something like this. Yeah, it's got to be on the cards. So
Yeah, I hope so.
all right, so I just want to start off with actually who is iupdateos and where are you all based, or is it just purely a solo thing?
It's just a solo thing, and we released it under the iupdateos, I guess, brand or label you could call it, because we wanted it to be very. This is coming all from me. Like I wanted it to be very unified. I wanted it to feel like this solid project, because I think it's really cool when people release solo projects like this. They usually do generally very well, but I wanted to get some brand recognition for this, and it was so cool to see the iUpdateOS, like not my name Sam, but like the iUpdateOS brand that I've been working on for 5 years on a number of blogs around the world. Like I retweeted a ton of articles on Twitter about people that wrote about it, not because it's like, oh, look where it got featured, but it was just really cool that people that have never heard the iUpdateOS name were hearing it for the first time. And it was so exciting to do that.
It certainly got my attention because I think I had seen your name floating around Instagram, but that wasn't until the 9to5Mac post about this that it really just blew the whole thing open, and I was like, wow, man, you've been doing this for so long. So yeah, it's been great because you've gained someone that now I want to follow all the stuff you do, see all the videos that you put up, subscribe, etc. And yeah, I've been really impressed so far. Well,
thank you. But we wanted to release it under this unified name, and that's why I reached out to Andrew to work on this. It's funny how we met. We met like 3 or 4 years ago, right when I was still pretty new on YouTube, and I had made a new intro, like really poorly in Keynote, and I'd exported it. And he was really good at After Effects then, because that's what we made this concept in. And he sent me on Twitter just a random tweet and was like, hey, I remixed your intro. And ever since then, we had just been talking. And then for this project, when we had each other's phone numbers, I had contacted Andrew in December and was like, dude, we gotta do an iOS concept. Like, let's try something for iOS 12. Let's see if we can do it. And it worked. And we got it done right around when we launched it. And then I was like, hey, let's release it on my channel. Like, get some recognition and then hopefully a lot of views and subscribers as well.
I think you certainly, now sort of put your name out there amongst the other people that are being known for their concepts, like stuff released through iDrop News and people that do the 3D work like Martin Hayjack and that.
Yeah, they're amazing.
Yeah, you're going to become another name among those, and with such a well created piece to kind of like kick it all off. I think there's certainly going to be several thousand eyes on what your next move is.
I'm very excited about that. Thanks.
Okay, so how long have you actually been into the concept creation? So you say that you've been doing tech videos since 2013, according to your site. So what about the actual creation of concepts?
I would say that has been really only 5 months or around then. I randomly always come up with a lot of ideas, and in December, maybe very end of November or December of 2017, right around when the semester at university was coming to a close, I was just like, I want to always trying to think of my next move on YouTube or something that I want to do that I haven't done before, that nobody else has really done. And I was like, a concept. I do iOS. I think I want to do a concept. So really, I'm very new to it. I'm very new to like the idea generation and the website creation and the animation aspect, really since November, December of last year.
Well, very fresh indeed. So with this being the thing that's kicked it all off for you, how long did it actually take from when you said, all right, now I'm starting on it to the release?
Oh my gosh, about 4 months, I would say.
Wow.
Andrew was very busy, so like it took both of us a lot longer. We actually planned to launch the concept on February 4th, if that gives you any perspective. So I was like, can we get it done? Can we ship it on February 4th? And Andrew's like, oh yeah, absolutely, of course, I got so much time. And then we both realized that's actually not going to be launching on February 4th.
It is. I mean, even though it's after your desired release date, it's actually quite timely, given that the WWDC's already been announced and all the hype is really kicked up for that. So, I'd say it's been a very good coincidence in timing there.
Yeah, I think it worked out pretty well.
Concept renders, images, and videos, they can vary greatly in their accuracy of whether it's actual design, matching to Apple's. And then, of course, a lot of features people try and put into it can be very far-fetched. So for deciding what to put into this, was there a process of elimination to come up with the final feature set and the look of what I deem a very realistic vision of iOS 12?
Yeah, that was our number one goal from the get-go. And it's funny because I don't think either of us directly said to each other, like, hey, we want this to be super realistic. I just started coming up with ideas and annoyances. A lot of it I actually got from r/Apple and r/iPhone. I went through a bunch of the older posts for people were asking for like iOS 12 wishlist, features you want to see in iOS 12. So when I kept seeing one that people really, really want is dark mode. And when I kept seeing dark mode and dark mode and dark mode and dark mode and dark mode, I was like, all right, Andrew, we gotta put dark, like to get traction, to have people really enjoy this, like we gotta have dark mode. I wanted dark mode. Andrew wanted it. Everybody wanted it. So we were like, that's gotta be in there. And then we were looking at other things, and I think I saw a report from Bloomberg that said new animojis were coming in iOS 12. And I'm like, all right, that seems like something pretty logical we could put in a concept. Like, let me throw an image together like that. And we basically just went through that process. Things we saw, things we thought of, things. Another thing that Andrew worked on himself was the universal volume indicator that's really small. It's in the top left-hand corner of the iPhone 10 or the status bar on any other device. We saw time and time again on Reddit. People did not like that volume indicator that was in the middle of the screen. And I feel like Apple themselves could really, really take inspiration from this, because I feel like you've just seen generally with the red iPhone 10. I haven't listened to your recent episode on it just yet, but I promise I will. With the red iPhone 8. With the red iPhone 8, everybody wanted the black front this year instead of the white front last year. And Apple listened, and everybody universally was more excited. I think I saw one tweet of like, oh, I like the white front better. Everybody else was more excited. I feel like if Apple applied that same methodology to the iOS 12 concept and just looked at realistic things that they could add, realistic changes that people want to see, the quality of iOS would shoot up and people would love it so much more.
Yeah, definitely. I think just to quickly touch on the last year's red iPhone with the white front, that was more of a following on from the general product red aesthetic of what they did with the iPod Touch. And then I think that upon the release of that, there was enough of as you say, enough of an uproar about, oh, please release it with the black front, that they finally took that on board. So, and I kind of think that Apple is sort of going a little bit more in that direction anyway, where they're now more listening to what the customers are wanting, as well as, this recent news of them creating their own Pro workflow team to help create the best Mac Pro. So I like this direction of Apple that they're going in, definitely.
Me too. Very exciting.
Okay, so with dark mode and the animation both handled by additional people, how did you actually collaborate on the concept? So was it sort of did you set out stages for it, or were you all working on it simultaneously?
Andrew, I had contacted about the concept immediately, and I was like, I know I need somebody else's help to be my right-hand person on this. I need somebody to really work on the concept. And I was like, all right, so I got Andrew, and then we were working on, we would talk, we would text. We probably made, 8 to 10 to 12 hours of phone calls, maybe more over the 4 months, just because we are in different locations. He's on, I believe, the East Coast. I'm in the central United States. And we were working on stuff. And one thing that we got to was dark mode. And he was working on something. I was working on stuff. And in the past, both of us had seen a 9 to 5 Mac article or a bunch of media coverage on this really good looking dark mode that a guy named Maximus Angelicus had made. And I reached out to Max because I was like, Andrew, if we could get this, like, oh my gosh, if he could send us the screenshots and the materials, I just feel like that would complete it. Obviously, give Max full credit for his work. And we reached out and I was like, there's no way like he's going to actually do this. And he was super cool about it. He's like, here are all my screenshots. Here's everything you need. Like, I'd love to be a part of this. Wow. He was actually, I don't know if he was a subscriber, but he had seen my videos in the past. So that was the first time I was ever like, oh, like, being a YouTuber has some influence of like people helping you out, which was definitely not anticipated, but it was very, very nice when it happened. And we basically just collaborated. We used Dropbox Paper to organize our ideas. We used Dropbox in general to share files, and those services worked pretty well for us. Like I really enjoyed, there's a service called Dropbox Paper, which is very similar to Google's Docs, where multiple people can collaborate simultaneously. And it was very helpful, especially when you're long distance, to get this project done.
Oh, I'm so glad that it all came together so easily like that. And the fact that it just it visually aligns with the entire video so well. Like, aside from you stating that there were different people involved, you could very much think that it was all created by one person. So I just love the fact that it all tied together. And so Max himself, he's UK based, is he?
I believe so.
Yes. Okay. Yep. Yeah, cool. All right. So one of my favorites out of the entire concept is the redesigned Reminders app. So whose idea was it to actually even redesign it?
So it was my idea to redesign it because I'm so angry at the Reminders app every time I open it, on the Mac, on the iPhone, on the iPad. I feel like it just hasn't changed that substantially from iOS 6. And I know that like the actual colors in it are flatter and simpler than iOS 6. But for me, the Reminders app is probably one of the biggest weak points of iOS right now. It never works that well, and the lists are sort of weird, and the way you select and unselect things doesn't make sense. I'm very confused by its general design. So I had told Andrew, like, hey, we gotta fix this somehow. And I don't know how to redesign it very well, but that was the actual design, and implementation of that into this concept was 100% Andrew's work. I just came up with the idea. And when he showed me this, I was like, wow, that dark mode Reminders app looks incredible. Like, I really want to get this on my iPhone.
I had some frustrations initially with Reminders app, and I mean, I use other ones like Notes and that so often, and just reminders when I have to for like shopping lists, etc. I'm pretty alright with it now, but it wasn't until I saw this redesign I was like, oh man, they really should do that. Like, it kind of re-sparked that my wish for some different design back when I was first using it. And I saw that, I was like, it's so clean, it's so easy to follow. Mm-hmm. And the hard thing about any concept things is you get so, with a video like this, is you get so attached to it that if something doesn't actually come out, you're a bit disappointed. But
oh yeah,
I wouldn't hold my breath that they're going to do any redesign for Reminders, but hopefully this catches their attention and they might be able to do something for iOS
same.
13 even.
Yeah, we haven't gotten an email from them yet, but we're hoping.
Groups notifications, group FaceTime, the resizing of the volume indicator, and dark mode, as you said, all heavily requested features from iOS users. Mm-hmm. Now, the minimize Siri was definitely a surprise. I saw that. I literally like fist pumped the air. And I was like, so yes. Cool. I was like, that is it. It just instantly made sense to me. I was like, what? Why can't this be a real thing? Because you can just then carry on with the rest of what you're doing on your device, and Siri doesn't completely overtake the screen, right? Mm-hmm. So basically that one was a huge surprise. I was really stoked with it. Was the inspiration behind this in any way related to how Siri on Mac looks, or was this just something that you wanted and then you included it in the concept?
That's really funny that you mentioned that, because when I read that, when you sent the questions over beforehand, I was like, you know what? It probably was. Like, I'm thinking subconsciously now. Yeah. It was probably inspired by that, because I did not realize how very similar, not identical, but very similar, that looks in the top right-hand corner of the Mac whenever you activate Siri. But maybe subconsciously I had seen it and that's where I got the idea. But that was another like example in this theme where I had designed it, and then Andrew basically just tweaked it and perfected it and put the Siri waves in there. And because I was thinking about it again, and I think I had seen on Reddit, I was like, why does Siri take up your full screen? Like, okay, you ask about a sports score, maybe it expands to a season schedule or the past 10 games or something. Yeah, feel free to go full screen. But if you're like, hey Siri, how's the weather? And you're in Tweetbot or Twitter or on Facebook, well, maybe not Facebook, but on another social media, you could just be like, hey, hey, tell me this quick information that I can glance at while I'm still scrolling or while I'm still using my device. And it just feels so antiquated that in iOS 6, it was sort of there where you could activate Siri and it would only come in like the bottom third of your screen. And then in iOS 7 through iOS 11, full screen Siri no matter what.
I mean, I've just grown so used to it. Again, it's like the Reminders app thing. I've grown so used to it that I don't think twice. But then now I've seen this, I'm like, oh, come on, they have to do it. They have to do it.
The grass is greener on the other side.
Yes, that is it. Now, speaking of other new things, which obviously exist in the Android world, is the always-on display. So with this version in your concept, you've got a subtle notification light, the time, and the torch. So how did you actually decide on the positioning of these elements? And could you imagine if the torch was, say, to be able to replace with the camera or something? Like in your concept, were you envisioning that to be customizable?
That's a great question. I would have to ask Max because this was actually his work. This is part of his dark mode.
Of course.
And I would be totally down for the customization. I know Apple doesn't generally love the customization of anything. For me, flashlight made the most sense because I'm like, if you need the flashlight or the camera, like I think the flashlight could potentially be more important, but at the same time, you can make that argument for the camera. Like you're going to need your camera more than you would ever need a torch or a flashlight on your phone. So Max had chosen the torch or the flashlight. I would have been cool with either. I see that there's definitely merit and a need for both or just one or the other, depending on what you're feeling. And then I really like the design of this. When I saw this as well from Max, I was like, oh my gosh, this has to be a part of it because I really like the subtle notifications and I like the time. It was perfectly minimalistic enough where I feel like the impact on battery wouldn't be that severe, but also like something for people that wanted an always on display.
I'm sure something like this is coming. I don't know if the positioning would reflect that. Like I would more think that Apple would say put the time in a similar top central position like the current time is. But as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh yeah, wow, that is actually quite unique. And yeah, like everything else, I'd love to see it happen. So something else I'd like to see is the cool addition of complications and the new dynamic wallpapers. So what do you think are the actual chances of Apple rolling out something like this, just bringing watch features to the phone, etc.?
Relatively realistic. I mean, people have wanted complications for a very long time. I actually wouldn't be all that shocked if in iOS 12 we saw something like complications. Dynamic wallpapers, I will not be holding my breath on. I don't think Apple's that excited about wallpapers as the rest of the community is, but I don't know if we'll be seeing that. However, complications, they're a feature on the watch that a lot of people like. They're a feature on the watch that I would argue is integral to watchOS and the Apple Watch experience.
Oh,
and
definitely.
Bringing
100%.
a small part of that to the iPhone, maybe, gosh, I'd love to see it on the iPad as well, or to the Mac in the future in some regard or some aspect in the menu bar. I feel like that would be fantastic. It's just another feature where you wouldn't have to unlock your phone to view the weather. You would have all the latest information at a glance, which is the whole point of their existence on the watch. I'd love to see that on the iPhone, and I think there's a good chance that Apple could do it. It's not a feature too far out of reality in my eyes because it's already on one platform. I could see them putting it on the iPhone and on iOS.
Yeah, it's cool. It was something that I hadn't really considered too much before, but as soon as I saw that, I was like, yeah, it certainly seems doable. Now, speaking of wallpapers, though, I read about your search to essentially find a new theme, and you arrived at what are desert-themed wallpapers, and the whole process sounds very thorough. So how long did it actually take to get to decide on the final three?
Oh my gosh. Well, I started off, I found one wallpaper on storyblocks.com. I promise you this is not an ad, but like I had worked with them in the past on a video. So they had given me access to like a premium account. And yep. I was looking on storyblocks.com because they like objectively outside of like the sponsorship, like they have a really good selection that I legitimately enjoy using. And I was looking at their stuff and I was like, okay, I found this perfect desert wallpaper. And if you go back to some of my older videos talking about iOS 12, my iOS 12 rumor videos, actually, I used this really good looking desert wallpaper. And then I realized, as Andrew and I were talking, I was like, oh yeah, like I'll put that up for download on my site. And then I'm like, hold on. Like, this is a royalty-free image, but am I allowed to distribute that? So I looked at the terms and service, and it was like, under no circumstance can you redistribute these photos. And I'm like, wait, yeah, that wouldn't make sense. Like, then where would be the need for the service in the first place? So I was like, oh my gosh, like I know people are going to want that wallpaper, and it's going to drive them insane if they cannot get it.
People go nuts over wallpapers.
Yeah. And I was like, there's no way I can do that, because people had already expressed interest in the image just from regular videos. And I was like, it could also be another way to drive clicks and revenue by having people go to my website. So I was like, I gotta find an image that I can redistribute that doesn't necessarily require attribution. So I found this site called, I believe, pexels.com or pexels.net. And they have hundreds or thousands, more than hundreds, probably a few thousands of these images that are royalty free that you can like give credit to, or you can just use them. And I read, you can redistribute them, you can hand them out, you can host them somewhere. And I was just like, okay, this is cool. Like, this is exactly what I need. And even on pexels.net, when I got to this stage after having already selected like 5 wallpapers from Storyblocks, I was like, oh man, this is challenging, because you find a lot of images and they look pretty good. They look okay. Like, or they'll be beautiful on your laptop or iMac screen. And then when you put them on the iPhone, you're like, oh my God, I probably tested 30-ish wallpapers on the iPhone, and some I just looked at and I was like, there's no way this would ever look good. There's no way I could ship a product like this. So then I finally found those 3, and I'm like, these look pretty good on iOS. These could totally be something that I could see Apple including. They look realistic. They were a new place for iOS. They'd give the concept a very distinct look, which is very important to me. And that's how that process went. But it was definitely quite painstaking, and I definitely got tired of looking at, sand and dunes after a few hours.
I can 100% relate, because I go through thematic phases with my wallpapers. And so what I tend to do is I want wallpapers that will relate to each other, but I have one for my Mac, one for the phone, one for iPad. So they're actually different, but I try to make it look like that they all tie together, right? And yes, you always come into that problem of finding a beautiful image and you put it on your iPhone, and once you put your icons on top of it, it's just so overcrowded. It's distracting away from the interface. And to find that perfect balance of something that's vibrant but not too saturated and not too busy but still detailed and high resolution, I can 100% relate.
Yeah, it's a harder process than people think.
Oh, definitely. So I instantly took to it, because I think you really nailed that balance that I'm looking for, and the fact that given the sort of like orange to blue, orange to purpley kind of like colors that are in there, I love that sort of color scheming anyway, and it instantly works well as a gradient within the type for the iOS 12 icon. So yeah, it's a big thumbs up from me.
Thanks.
A quick little one that I noticed was your blue Messages app icon. And then, of course, the inclusion of Shazam as a little tab in music. So what was the reasoning behind these two?
I'm really excited that you picked up on that blue Messages icon. I did a video, like, sort of breakdown on the whole concept after the short, like, minute 30 version went up. And I totally forgot to mention that. Like, I had been very intentional in including this, and I think this is another one that I found on Reddit or that I had come up with, and I was like, why is Messages green? Like, sure, SMS made sense on the original iPhone when iMessage was not a conceptualized feature yet, but now that everyone on the earth likes iMessage better than SMS, I would argue, that has an iPhone, I think it would make sense to make the Messages icon blue, and I think that would be kind of a cool change. So when we did that, we included it in all the screenshots. We made sure, I think, across the board, every screenshot that was posted on the site, iosconcept.com, or in the video would have that blue icon. And we chose it because of iMessage. So that was a pretty easy change. We basically just sampled, or I think I actually created the icon. I just sampled the old Messages icon, kind of blew it up and copy and pasted like a vectorized shape of it, and then made the background the same blue gradient as what's on the Mac for that Messages icon. Once again, to make it pretty realistic. And then Shazam, this is an idea that I came up with myself, and an idea that I designed myself. And I'm not a designer, So I was very, very worried about including this in the concept, because I'm pretty sure like I broke a lot of user interface guidelines and a lot of UI and user experience rules. And to me, to my eye, it turned out pretty good. But I know if I sat down with any designer, they would be like, what? Why did you do this? None of this makes any sense by any means. But I was really happy with it. And because Apple had acquired Shazam, for me, it's a logical progression for them eventually to integrate most of the companies and services that they purchase into their products. And I think including Shazam built into the music app would be a win for users, and it would just kind of make sense now that they own the company.
This was another little surprise inclusion in the concept, and I'm glad that you took that news of the Shazam acquisition and actually, put it included it in some form beyond just, what Siri can do when you ask it what song is playing. So when we covered this bit of news several episodes ago, we were kind of pondering as to what they could actually do with it, and we definitely are anticipating some form of Shazam announcement at WWDC. And I certainly think, given the size of the platform and that, they're not going to just say take the technology and then rebrand it with a different name. I think they're going to retain the Shazam naming at least. And yeah, so the fact that you've placed it there nicely with the original logo, it makes sense to me, and it's exciting because then it comes across as more of a nice little cohesion of Apple and such a large platform as Shazam, rather than just Apple overtaking. Even though they have acquired it, I understand, it kind of still lives on within the music app, which totally makes sense as to where it should belong.
Yeah, Shazam's a huge name. They have a lot of brand recognition, so I think it would be very weird, like you said, for Apple to just kind of remove it or call it like Apple recognition or something. That would be weird.
Yeah.
I think Shazam, keeping that name is very important because they already have a huge brand, and everyone pretty much knows Shazam if you're trying to find a song.
And as far as I can tell, the Android platform is still going to continue to run as is. So yeah, certainly retaining the Shazam name definitely seems like a good move. Now, something that does need a bit of a change up is there's obviously this current differentiation between how you invoke Control Center. So the positioning on the iPhone 10 is different to the iPad, is different to current other iPhones, which is a very frustrating pain point. So can you please use your concept to convince Apple to adopt your all-in-one multitasking solution, because I love it.
Oh, thank you so much. This was one, I think, without Reddit or anyone else it was my baby and my brainchild, because like you said, I love the iPad's multitasking, and I'm so excited for what the iPad X, whatever it's going to be called, the iPad probably coming right at WWDC or around the time with Face ID in the future, being able to swipe up to go into multitasking and swipe down on an app to keep going. But you also have access to Control Center and the now playing section for music or podcast or any other audio. And I love that on the iPad. So I really thought about it. I'm like, how can I realistically bring this to the iPhone? And I definitely got some inspiration from this, from a jailbreak tweak back in the day called OXO or OXO 2. They were huge in the jailbreak community when I was into it, and they allowed you to do something like this, access to some quicker toggles and your recently used applications as well. And I was like, okay, how can I do this? How can I do this in a way that would make sense to me? And once again, from a user experience, from a user interface guideline standpoint, I'm not sure if it holds up, but for me, it made sense. You would swipe up from the app you're currently using or from the home screen, and that would go to the very top of the screen. So you'd be swiping a little bit farther than you are now, but pressing and holding in the middle of the screen would make this come up. And then you would swipe from left to right on your apps at the very top and then up to down. So like it wouldn't ever get confused where you'd be swiping left to right and the switcher would be moving around, your controls would be popping up. Left to right would only do app switcher and things that are actually recent apps that you have used, and then up and down would show you all your recently used toggles. You can customize Control Center just like you can now. And all of this is accessible by swiping up from the bottom of the screen, tapping or swiping up, holding, and then you're instantly in this new multi-view Control Center area.
Yeah, I certainly think retaining the current multitasking gesture, which I love doing, and yeah, still being able to do that without accidentally hitting something else, like nailing that aspect of it, and this all-in-one design that you've put forth. Yeah, if they can get that balance right and visually looking at least quite similar to what you've done, I'd be very keen for that, because I've grown used to the far reach to the top right, but the fact that you have to do it and then you go to iPad and you start swiping down from the top right, nothing's happening. Yeah, it's something that definitely needs to be addressed. And when we were reviewing iPhone 10, it definitely felt like the positioning of the control center was a bit of an afterthought. So yeah, if they can nail it in all in one area like you have, I would just be absolutely chuffed.
Yeah, I 100% agree. The control center task, or the control center activation on the iPhone 10 totally feels like, all right, what's the one part of the iPhone we haven't used yet? Where can we throw this super important feature that a lot of people use? And they just kind of settled on the top right.
Yeah, I mean, I love the design of it. It's just where you have to invoke it. That's the issue. But this brings us to my last question is, so given this is essentially your first concept, what's the next concept for iupdateos? Or is that kind of like top secret information? Or do you not even know yet?
I can give you a brief preview. So I'm working with, I'll leave it at the bare bones, but I'm working with a larger YouTuber on the possibility of something like next gen iPhone, iOS 12, how that could possibly look. Yeah, it's in very early stages right now.
Wow.
But if it gets the green light, if everything works out, it would be huge for the channel, obviously. It would be really exciting, just because I feel like knowing who this YouTuber is and the work they've done, I feel like it would be the perfect combination with our concept and other work they've done for future phones in the past. And then I really want to do an iOS 13 concept as well. I made a joke to Andrew as soon as it went live, our iOS 12 concept. I'm like, all right, you ready to start working on iOS 13? And I've already created another Dropbox paper document that I haven't shared with anybody yet, but I'm already collecting my ideas of things that I've seen, of comments that I've read, of things that I do not want to forget, because I'm reading them again and I'm like, oh yeah, that would really make sense for the future. So that's where we're at. I absolutely want to do more stuff in the future. They're a lot of fun to work on. They're a blast. I'm learning that because the video is embedded on so many sites, the ad revenue was not where I expected it to be. So as far as like a monetary payback, definitely not where I anticipated it. But the brand recognition is super important. And honestly, just seeing the community light up over this was cooler than anything else. Andrew was so happy. I mean, he literally sent me a text and he was like, Sam, I cannot believe that it's at 300,000 views that we went this far. We did it. Like, it didn't get the 5,000 views that we worried it would. People really lost this. And I told him, like, the idea that people that we didn't even know were talking about this on Twitter. Like, we saw random tweets just saying, saw an iOS 12 concept, looked amazing, can't wait. Like, the fact that we spurred this conversation that nobody planned on having on the day we released it kind of blew my mind, and it absolutely makes me want to do it again. It was so fun and a great learning experience. So definitely look forward to at least something else coming in the future.
Well, yeah, I certainly think you deserve all the congratulations for it, because it's doing the thing that a lot of other concepts don't do, and that's actually delivering something that seems very achievable. And yeah, very much appreciate all the effort that's gone into it. Love hearing how it all came together. Really ecstatic as to the huge reaction it's got for you, and a way to sort of propel this type of thing forward. And yeah, very much thanks for kind of dropping a few little hints for what's to come next. So I'm very intrigued for that. There's definitely even more to explore that I haven't actually mentioned yet, but I will point out to the listeners, there is actually an additional video that you did pointing out some of the other features that are on the website that didn't make it in the initial video. So I'll definitely link to that too. But ultimately, Sam, I'd love to thank you for coming on the show, taking the time to provide this behind-the-scenes look at iOS 12.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me, Simon. It was a blast talking about it. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, cheers. I'm glad that we could arrange it with the big time difference we got going on. So if any Apple Slice listeners would like to know more about iUpdateOS and get hold of some sweet retro merch, where can they find you?
Oh, thank you so much for plugging the merch, Simon.
It looks cool. I like it.
Thank you. You can head over to shop.iupdateos.com if you're interested in buying a shirt. I worked very hard on that collection. Very proud of it myself. I really tried to go with some retro vibes on that. So I do appreciate you mentioning that. You can find me online at youtube.com/iupdateos, on Twitter, twitter.com/iupdateos. It's a very kind of long name. Right now, like iupdateos, it's kind of hard to remember and not super memorable, but basically just think about iOS with update right in the middle, because that's what the channel's about, talking about iOS and that stuff.
Last question that I had is, how did you manage to nab iosconcept.com as a domain? I thought for sure that would have been taken.
This is a hilarious story. I was talking to Andrew. It was about 2 a.m. one night, and it's a running joke between my friend group and I that I compulsively buy domains. And I actually think I have a guilty pleasure of buying domains, because at one point I owned like 6, and they were all really bad. But at the time, at like 2 a.m. when I was just really tired, I'm like, this is the greatest domain ever. It's going to be huge. And I was looking, and I'm like, chances, because if you go to iPhone 11, iPhone12.com, those have been taken years in advance, or iPhone.com, I believe Apple actually owns. So I was like, okay, iOS concept, like that's definitely something it's relatively low key, but it's probably taken. So I initially searched iOS 12 concept, and I'm like, Andrew, iOS 12 concept.com is not taken. We got to get this. And then I was thinking, well, hold on, let me try. There's no way iOSconcept.com isn't taken. And I go to domains.google.com, and what do you know? iOSconcept.com is not taken. And I think that from the time I started searching for domains to the time I checked out was about 1 minute and 45 seconds. I was like, this is too good. This is too real. Talk about a memorable name, a memorable URL.
Yeah.
And if we do future concept work, where better to host it than iOSconcept.com. I was blown away that I got that. Incredibly fortunate. Maybe it'll be worth, I don't know, some money someday. But for right now, we're going to keep it and host all our stuff there.
That is such a good find. I could just imagine the excitement when you found that.
Thank you. We were both absolutely shocked. Andrew was telling me there's no way this is available, but it somehow was. It's one of those, I think, golden domains that no one had found for some reason.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. So I guess the only thing now is to cross your fingers, your toes, your eyes, and whatever, that Apple can make some of these ideas in your iOS 12 concept a reality. So that caps off the end of this bonus bite by Apple Slice. Thanks again, Sam. And really looking forward to what actually happens at this year's event and what next concept video you'll release.
Thank you.
Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.